If you had told me 10 years ago that the most painful words I would ever hear wouldn't come from a stranger, but from my own son, I would have laughed. Not because my son was perfect, but because I thought love protected you from certain kinds of cruelty. I was wrong. My name is Laura Mitchell. I'm 58 years old, and until recently, I believed I had built a strong, loving family here in Ohio. My husband David and I raised our son Eric in that house. Same oak floors, same creaky staircase, same kitchen table where I helped him with homework and packed his lunches. We weren't rich, but we were stable. David worked 30 years as a high school math teacher. I worked part-time at a community library. We saved carefully. We sacrificed vacations. We refinanced the house once to help Eric pay for his business degree. And when Eric married Chloe 3 years ago, we welcomed her into our home. Yes, into our home. Because after David's health started declining, we thought having everyone under one roof would feel safer, more supportive, more like family. David had congestive heart failure. It wasn't new. We'd been managing it for years. Medications, doctor visits, sodium restrictions, some good weeks, some frightening ones. But lately, the bad days were coming more often. He would sit in his recliner by the window, pretending to watch baseball while quietly struggling to breathe. And I would pretend not to notice how his hands trembled. Eric and Chloe occupied the upstairs master suite. We moved into the downstairs guest room to avoid the stairs for David. Sometimes I told myself it was temporary. Sometimes I told myself children go through selfish phases. Sometimes I told myself not to take things personally. But little things started adding up. Chloe complained about privacy. Eric complained about stress. They both talked about needing space. In a house David and I had paid off just 2 years ago. Still, I stayed quiet, because mothers stay quiet longer than they should. The night everything changed started like any other. It was a Thursday. Chloe was blow-drying her hair upstairs. I could hear music blasting from their room. Eric was pacing in the kitchen, dressed in a navy blazer. "Date night?" I asked gently. "Yeah," he said, checking his watch. "Reservation at 7:30. David had been unusually tired all day. He barely touched dinner. Around 6:45, I noticed his breathing was shallow, too shallow. I walked over and knelt beside him. "David?" His lips were pale. "I'm okay," he whispered. "Just tight. But I've been married to that man for 36 years. I know the difference between I'm okay and I'm scared." His fingers gripped the armrest. That's when I felt it. Panic. The cold kind that climbs up your spine. I grabbed my purse and hurried into the kitchen. "Eric," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I think we need to take your dad to the hospital." He didn't look up immediately. "What?" "He's struggling to breathe." Eric exhaled sharply, annoyed. "Mom, he's been struggling for months. This is different." Chloe came downstairs, adjusting her earrings. "What's going on? Dad needs the ER," I said. Eric ran a hand through his hair. "We're about to leave." My heart started pounding harder. "Please," I said, "let me take the car." We only had one reliable vehicle left, Eric's SUV. David had sold his truck when medical bills increased. Mine had broken down last winter, and we couldn't justify replacing it. Eric hesitated. Chloe crossed her arms. "Can't you call an ambulance?" she asked. "You know how much that costs," I replied quietly. "Our insurance barely covered the last one." Eric sighed dramatically. "Mom, we've had this reservation for weeks." I stared at him. For a second, I genuinely thought he was joking. "Eric," I said, my voice breaking now, "your father might be having heart failure." Chloe glanced at Eric. "If we cancel again, they'll charge us." Cancel again. Again. My husband was gasping for air in the next room. "Please," I whispered, "just give me the keys." Eric's jaw tightened. And then he said the words that split my world in two. "Handle it yourself, Mom." Everything went silent. Even Chloe stopped moving. I felt something inside me detach. "Excuse me?" I asked softly. "We can't put our lives on hold every time Dad feels bad." Eric snapped. You're his wife. You handle it. You're his wife. You handle it. As if love was a burden. As if 36 years meant nothing. As if he wasn't his father. I looked at my son, the boy who once cried because he scraped his knee, the teenager who called his dad his hero, the young man we emptied our savings account for, and I realized something terrifying. I didn't recognize him anymore. Upstairs, David coughed, a harsh, wet sound. Chloe shifted uncomfortably. Eric, maybe just. But he grabbed his keys and stepped back. We're already late. My hands were shaking. I wanted to scream. I wanted to slap him. I wanted to beg again. Instead, I straightened my shoulders. I looked him in the eyes. And I said calmly, "Okay, my son." He seemed relieved, as if I had finally stopped being inconvenient. As if the crisis had passed, he and Chloe walked out the front door. The engine started. Headlights swept across the living room wall. And then they were gone. I stood there for exactly 3 seconds. Then I ran back to David. His breathing was worse. I grabbed my phone and dialed our neighbor, Mr. Thompson. "Please," I said when he answered, "I need help." As I helped my husband into a borrowed car 10 minutes later, one thought echoed in my mind. Handle it yourself. I didn't know it yet, but I would. And when I did, my son would never forget it. The hospital lights are cruel at night. Too bright, too white. By the time Mr. Thompson pulled up to the emergency entrance, David's head had fallen against my shoulder. "Stay with me," I kept whispering. "David, look at me." His fingers were cold. Nurses rushed him inside on a wheelchair while I stumbled behind, clutching his wallet and medical file like they were oxygen. Everything after that felt fragmented. Monitors, footsteps, the sharp smell of antiseptic, a young ER doctor asking me questions I could barely process. How long has he been short of breath? Did he take his medication today? When did the symptoms worsen? I answered everything. I answered perfectly. Because that's what wives do. We memorize our husband's conditions. We track every pill, every appointment, every warning sign. But none of that stopped the doctor from walking toward me 40 minutes later with a look I had only seen in movies. The kind of look that prepares you for impact. We did everything we could. Those 6 words. They don't shout. They don't explode. They just collapse something inside you. Apparently, David had gone into acute cardiac arrest shortly after arrival. His oxygen levels had dropped too low on the way. If he had arrived sooner, the doctor began gently. I didn't let him finish. I didn't need to hear the rest. Sooner. The word echoed. Sooner. I signed papers with a hand that didn't feel like mine. I called Eric. It went to voicemail. I called again. This time, Chloe answered. "We're at dinner," she said, lowering her voice. "What's going on?" There was music in the background. Laughter. "Your father-in-law is dead," I said calmly. Silence. Then scrambling. Then, "We're coming." Of course they were. Death is more inconvenient than illness. They arrived 27 minutes later. Eric's face was pale. Chloe looked shaken. "Mom," he said breathlessly. "What happened?" I looked at him, really looked at him. The same eyes as his father, the same jawline, but none of the same heart. "They did everything they could," I replied. He swallowed. "Was it sudden?" I held his gaze for a long second. "No," I said quietly, "it wasn't." His eyes flickered. For a moment. Just a moment. Guilt appeared. But guilt is fragile. It disappears when it's uncomfortable. He stepped forward to hug me. I didn't move. Instead, I said the only words he had given me that night. "I handled it." He froze. Chloe shifted awkwardly beside him. That was the first time he understood that I remembered. The funeral was small. David didn't like attention. Former colleagues from the high school came. A few neighbors, 2 of Eric's childhood friends. Eric cried during the service. Loudly, he spoke about his father's sacrifices, about how much he had learned from him, about strength and integrity. People nodded. I watched, and I wondered which version of his father he thought he was honoring, the man who taught him responsibility, or the man he abandoned for a dinner reservation. After the burial, we returned to the house. Our house. David's chair was still angled toward the window. His coffee mug sat on the side table. His slippers were by the couch. Grief is strange. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just sits next to you and breathes. That night, Eric knocked on my bedroom door. "Can I come in?" I was sitting on the edge of the bed holding David's wedding band in my palm. "Yes." He stepped inside slowly. "Mom, I'm so sorry." "For what?" I asked evenly. "For everything." That word again. Everything. I tilted my head. "Do you mean for your father's death?" His face tightened. "Don't say it like that." "How should I say it?" He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "I didn't know it was that serious." I nodded slowly. "I did." Silence filled the room. "I thought you were overreacting," he admitted quietly. "Yes," I said. That seemed to sting him more than anger would have. He waited for me to cry, to yell, to accuse, but I had passed that stage somewhere between the ER doors and the doctor's voice. "I need some time," I told him calmly. "Of course," he said quickly. "Take all the time you need." Oh, I would. Over the next few days, something shifted in me. Not loudly, not dramatically, just clearly. I stopped cooking dinner for 4. I stopped reminding Eric about household bills. I stopped asking Chloe about her day. I moved through the house like a quiet tenant. They whispered upstairs at night. They thought grief had broken me. They didn't realize it had clarified me. On the 4th day after the funeral, I scheduled a meeting. On the 6th day, I gathered documents. On the 7th day, I made a decision that would change all of our lives. Eric found me in the kitchen that evening, sorting through papers. "What's all that?" he asked. I smiled faintly. "Just handling things." He didn't understand yet, but he would. And when he did, he would finally learn what responsibility feels like. Grief makes people underestimate you. They think because you're quiet, you're weak. Because you're calm, you're defeated. Eric made that mistake. On the 8th morning after David's funeral, I woke up before sunrise. I made coffee, just 1 cup now, and sat at the kitchen table with a folder in front of me. Inside it were 36 years of marriage. The deed to the house, bank statements, investment accounts, life insurance paperwork, and David's will. Eric came downstairs around 8:15, scrolling on his phone. "Morning, Mom." "Good morning." He poured himself cereal and leaned against the counter. "Chloe and I were thinking," he began carefully, "maybe it's time we renovate the downstairs. You know, make it more open, fresh start." I looked up slowly. "A fresh start?" "Yeah, for all of us. For all of us. The same house his father built shelf by shelf. The same walls that had absorbed decades of birthday candles and Christmas mornings. Renovate." I closed the folder gently. "Eric," I said, my voice steady, "how much do you think this house is worth?" He blinked, confused. "I don't know. Maybe $450,000? The market's crazy right now." $468,000, I corrected. "I had it appraised yesterday." His spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. "Why?" I held his eyes. "Because I'm selling it." The spoon clattered into the bowl. "What?" "I've accepted an offer. Closing is in 30 days. For a moment, he just stared at me like I had spoken another language. "You can't be serious." "I am." Chloe appeared at the bottom of the stairs, sensing tension. "What's going on?" "Mom says she's selling the house," Eric snapped. Chloe's face drained of color. "Selling? Where are we supposed to go?" I folded my hands on the table. "I assume you'll handle that yourselves." Eric stiffened. "Mom, this is our home too." "No," I replied calmly. "It's not." Silence dropped like a stone. "I checked the deed yesterday," I continued. "The house has always been in my name and your father's name. When he passed, his share transferred entirely to me." Eric shook his head in disbelief. But I've been helping with bills. You've been paying utilities, I corrected gently. Occasionally, Chloe crossed her arms. You can't just throw us out. We're family. Family. The word almost made me laugh. Family, I said softly, doesn't say handle it yourself when someone is dying. Eric's face flushed red. That's not fair. Isn't it? You're blaming me for Dad. I'm acknowledging reality. He paced across the kitchen. So what? This is punishment? I considered that. No, I said honestly. This is consequence. Chloe's voice sharpened. You're being vindictive. I stood up slowly. For 36 years, I stood beside a man who would have given you the car without being asked twice. For 36 years, I protected you from consequences. I won't do that anymore. Eric's voice cracked. Where are you even going? I paused just long enough to let the answer land. I bought a small condo near the lake. He stared at me. With what money? I opened the folder and slid one document toward him. Life insurance payout, $750,000. His eyes widened. Dad had a policy? He whispered. Yes, I said. One he took out years ago, just in case. Chloe's gaze shifted quickly between us. You're not giving us any of that? She asked carefully. I met her eyes. No. Eric stepped back like he'd been physically struck. That's my father's money. It was your father's protection, I corrected, for his wife. Anger finally surfaced fully in him. You're unbelievable. No, I said quietly. I was unbelievable when I begged for the car. The words hung in the air like a verdict. He looked like he wanted to argue, to fight, to twist the narrative. But there was nothing to twist. Facts are stubborn. You have 30 days, I said calmly. Use them wisely. Chloe grabbed Eric's arm and pulled him upstairs. Voices erupted moments later. Accusations, panic, blame. I sat back down at the kitchen table and took a slow sip of my now cold coffee. For the first time since David's death, I felt steady, not happy, not healed, just steady. Over the next 2 weeks, reality hit them harder than any words I could have spoken. Apartments were expensive. Mortgages required savings they didn't have. Their plans had always included living comfortably in a paid-off house, my house. One evening, Eric came downstairs looking exhausted. We can't find anything decent under $20 a month, he muttered. I nodded sympathetically. That's unfortunate. He stared at me. You're really not going to help? I tilted my head. You're a grown man, Eric. He swallowed. You're my mom. Yes, I agreed softly, and I handled it. He flinched. That was the moment he truly understood, not because I raised my voice, not because I cried, but because I didn't. The closing date approached quickly. Boxes filled their room upstairs. Stress replaced arrogance. And on the final week before signing papers, Eric knocked on my door again. But this time, he wasn't angry. He was scared. And that changed everything. The night Eric knocked on my door, he didn't wait for permission. He just stepped inside. His shoulders were slumped. His confidence, that easy, careless confidence, was gone. Mom, he said quietly, we need to talk. I closed the book in my lap. I'm listening. For a moment, he just stood there, the same way he used to when he was 10 and about to confess he'd broken something. We messed up, he finally said. I didn't answer, he swallowed. I messed up, closer. Closer? Chloe wasn't with him. That told me everything. We can't afford anything decent, he continued. Every place we've seen, it's small, or it's far from work, or they want deposits we don't have. He rubbed his face with both hands. I didn't realize how hard it is. No, he hadn't, because he'd never had to. You didn't realize how hard it is, I repeated calmly, to figure things out when someone you depend on suddenly isn't there? His eyes lifted to mine, and for the first time since that night, I saw it. Understanding, real understanding. His voice cracked. I didn't think Dad would. I didn't think it was that serious. I did, I said gently. Silence stretched between us. I keep replaying it, he whispered. You standing there, asking for the keys. The memory was finally haunting him. Good. I thought you were overreacting, he continued. I thought we deserved one night. One night. At the cost of a lifetime. I stood up slowly and walked toward the dresser. From the top drawer, I pulled out something small and metallic. David's old car key. The spare. I held it in my palm and looked at Eric. Your father kept this in case of emergencies, I said softly. He always believed you prepare for the worst, so the people you love don't suffer. Eric's eyes filled. I failed him. Yes, I said. Not cruelly, not angrily, just truthfully. He nodded, tears finally falling. I know. That was the difference. Before, he defended himself. Now, he owned it. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said hoarsely. I don't even expect help. I need you to know I would take it back if I could. I studied him carefully. Grief can harden someone, but it can also mature them. Sit, I said quietly. He obeyed. I walked back to the bed and picked up a second folder, one he hadn't seen. I handed it to him. He looked confused. What's this? Open it. Inside were documents, not for the house, for something else. His eyes scanned the first page and widened. A rental agreement, 12 months prepaid, for a modest but clean townhouse 15 minutes from his office. He stared at me. You, what is this? I signed it yesterday, I said calmly. It's in your name. His mouth fell open. You said you weren't helping. I said I wouldn't protect you from consequences. He looked back at the papers, stunned. You're still moving out, he realized. Yes. You're still selling the house. Yes. Then why? Because, I interrupted gently, your father raised you better than that night, and I refuse to let one failure define the rest of your life. His chest shook. I don't deserve this. No, I agreed. Not yet. He flinched at the honesty. But this isn't a reward, I continued. It's a lesson. He looked at me confused. For 1 year, I said firmly, you will pay every bill on time. You will build savings. You will learn what it means to carry responsibility without assuming someone else will rescue you. He nodded quickly. I will. If you fail, I added calmly, I will not step in again. I won't fail. I held his gaze. You already did once. The words hurt him. They were meant to. But people can change, I said softly, if they choose to. He stood suddenly and crossed the room, wrapping his arms around me. This time, I didn't step back. He cried like he hadn't since he was a child. I'm so sorry, Mom, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I closed my eyes. I know. And for the first time since David died, the house didn't feel heavy. Closing day came 2 weeks later. I handed over the keys. I didn't look back. My condo by the lake was small, quiet, peaceful. In the evenings, I sit on the balcony and watch the water shift colors with the sunset. Sometimes I think about that night, about the words that shattered something inside me. Handle it yourself, I did, but not the way he expected. I didn't scream. I didn't disown him. I didn't destroy him. I made him stand on his own feet. And that lesson will last longer than any inheritance ever could. Last Sunday, Eric came by the lake with groceries. He fixed a loose cabinet hinge without being asked. He hugged me before leaving. And when I mentioned I might need a ride to a doctor's appointment next month, he didn't hesitate. I'll handle it, Mom. This time he meant it. If this story touched you, don't wait to tell your loved ones you care. Sometimes a single moment of kindness or responsibility can change a life forever. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. Have you ever faced a moment where someone you loved let you down? How did you handle it? Share your story below. I'd love to hear your experiences.
Bye! Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.